is to receive the report and that direction or confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Kim, second. Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions? Councillor Humphries, did you want to?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I could not make closed session, so I won't be voting.
Well, I would just ask you to step away then. Right, Mr. Clerk? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Record a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for the first item of council reporting out of closed session. Councillor Kim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
And Councillor Humphries is absent. Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Gaertner? She is not on yet. Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
And Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Second item.
The second item reporting of council reporting out of closed session is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Someone like to move that? Councillor Gallo, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Comments, questions? Record a vote, Mr. Clerk.
A recorded vote has been requested for council reporting out of closed session for item number 2. Councillor Gilliland, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Humphries is absent. Councillor Kim?
No.
Councillor Gaertner? Also absent. And Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gallo. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Gallo. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Don't go anywhere. We are starting general committee. All right. Mr. Clerk, time is 7:07. I call this general committee meeting to order. Procedural notes. This meeting will be held electronically as per section 19(1) of the town's procedural bylaw number 6228-19 as amended due to the COVID-19 situation. I get a motion to approve the agenda with the added items. Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson, comments, questions? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no community presentations. Delegations, we have one. Ms. Rebecca Beaton representing Regency Acres Ratepayers Association regarding item 8.1 Stable Neighborhood Policy Review Urban Design Guidelines. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Ms. Beaton on the line, so I think there's no further instructions. I'll ask Ms. Beaton to start her delegation.
Ms. Beaton, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you again for deferring this from 2 weeks ago. On August the 28th, the Regency Acres Ratepayers Association provided detailed feedback to planning staff and council regarding the draft urban design guidelines for stable neighborhoods. We appreciate that some of the gaps and editing issues have been addressed in the revision that council considered 2 weeks ago and has deferred to this week. However, we strongly believe the guidelines are not adequate to provide the protections needed to fulfill the official plan and design guidelines goal of protecting, quote, respecting and enforcing, end of quote, the characters of Aurora stable neighborhoods, particularly for Regency Acres. How does council intend on enforcing these guidelines. The design guidelines for Regency Acres have serious flaws that stem from key decisions made by Council over the past 3 years. 1, the decision to add Golf Glen, comprising of newer, larger homes, to Regency Acres. 2, the decision to have a common set of zoning bylaws for the 4 designated neighborhoods, despite the obvious difference in the age, style, and size of the existing houses. And 3, the decision to base the gross floor area bylaw on an unweighed average of the square footage of the housing in the 4 areas, therefore increasing the GFA by about 200 square feet in Regency Acres. These and other council decisions over the near and long term will have the greatest negative impact on the character of the 1960s Regency Acres area. This is because the original housing stock has the smallest GFA and the lowest roof height and lot coverage of the 4 stable neighborhoods. We recognize that Aurora's revised zoning bylaws have somewhat limited height and GFA. We also recognize that these guidelines have addressed some of the other concerns raised by the ratepayers groups and associations. However, at the end of the day, guidelines are not enforceable. This is made abundantly clear in how the guidelines themselves are worded. We remain extremely concerned that infill home builders can continue to build homes that ignore all the design guideline recommendations, submit various applications asking for increase in GFA and height, adding architectural lighting around all sides of the property with no limit on the wattage of those lights and how they impose on neighboring homes. I would have thought that this issue could be placed in a bylaw, and I'm sure that there are some other recommendations in the staff report and guidelines that can be placed into a bylaw. Additional security cameras that are located on properties that are intrusive to neighbors' privacy. Building balconies, rear and side decks that are significantly above the roof line of adjacent homes and thereby encroaching on their privacy. Removing mature trees to help build these larger scale of infill homes. The preservation of mature trees is critical to the environment and Aurora's urban canopy. There needs to be an enforcement requirement to prevent the loss of these mature trees and landscaping. And perhaps we should grandfather the current infill homes and require them to also provide landscaping and trees. Page 6 of the design guidelines suggests that the context area for infill development be properties with a 150-meter radius. We believe that this should be expanded to a 2-block radius and that neighbors living within this area should be informed about demolitions and building applications. Finally, the November 3rd and 17th staff report includes our recommendation that Council should be made aware of all infill building applications that are approved by planning staff. But we also recommended that all applications which do not comply with specific guidelines and recommendations be presented in a staff report. In addition, we are recommending that these staff reports be semi-annual rather than annual. We believe this will allow Council to make an informed decision about whether the zoning bylaws need to be amended to address specific issues, such as balcony and deck placement, exterior lighting, driveway placement, tree protection, etc. As infill development continues in Aurora stable neighborhoods, we fully expect that the semi-annual report will quickly make it obvious that additional zoning bylaws will be needed to protect Aurora's stable neighborhoods. Thank you. That's all I have to say this evening. Any questions?
Beaton. First, I'll ask Council a motion to receive and refer. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Kim. Any questions for the delegate? Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you through Mr. Mayor, and I just want to thank Ms. Beaton for delegating this evening. Your points are well taken and very eloquently stated. You've given us, or me, food for thought for sure, and things and what we can do. And what you've mentioned about a biannual report would quickly help us understand the state. So thank you very much for bringing forward your items of concern, and we're listening very closely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Wendy? Oh, Councillor Gaertner, sorry.
Thank you. Could you just speak about the area of concern, the context area? Is that that staff should also expand their area in reviewing what is in the area and what is acceptable, plus also a notification to that context area?
That is correct. And that it be widened to include more homeowners.
Right.
And that we be informed of demolitions and building applications.
And what would your expectation be after you were informed?
Speaking.
We would like to see what the proposed designs are for that location, whether the guidelines are being met, any questions or concerns that we might have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the delegate? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for speaking today and taking the time in these last couple of weeks to give us your thoughts and representing the community. You had mentioned something about page 6 of the report, and there was a long list of things you're going on. I kind of missed that, trying to scroll quickly through that. Could you just remind me what you were referring to on page 6?
Sure. Certainly. That was actually what Councillor Gaertner just brought up, and that is page 6 is the context area for infill development.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was actually page 6 of the
Design
guidelines versus like my agenda, because I just want to make sure we're talking about the exact same page. So the objective of the design guidelines?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Rebecca, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Just on that note, do you have a preference? Currently 150 meters. What does the community? What would the community prefer?
We would prefer, because it is construction, we would prefer a 2-block radius rather than 150-meter radius, because it's still very close to whatever development might be going in there that we can all see and comment on should we have questions. So a 2-block area. And I'm sorry, I don't know how many meters that is.
Councillor?
And the rationale for that is to have a greater context. I mean, the purpose of this, as I understand it, is to have context in terms of, various determinations.
And the residents,
a larger area would provide more context?
No, they would be impacted by it in that it's only 2 blocks. So those people driving, those people walking, those people living on the street, but down the street.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. And thanks for all the work you've done, extensive comments in our report from the Ratepayers Group. Very well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a question, it's a comment. And I appreciate all the work that the residents and the Ratepayer Association has done on this. And thank you for your work coming to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beaton.
Thank you.
Council, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Council will move to the consent agenda. We have a memo from Councillor Gaertner. Councillor Gaertner, I'm assuming you want to pull in for a second.
Yes, please.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I'm off screen. Let me just get this up. This is something that I believe, Mr. CAO, you received from Lake Simcoe.
Michelle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it was sent to all CEOs in the catchment area, as well as clerks.
Thank you. I did find out about this, the possibility of this at our last meeting, but it wasn't official. So as this was more or less last minute, I'm just going to read the parts that I think are important and that I would appreciate council's support. It's from the CAO, Mr. Walters, excuse me, and he's talking about Bill 229. There are a lot of changes that are going to affect the Conservation Authority and by way of them municipalities and residents. And I'll just say that the Conservation Authority has been tasked to protect our environment, our watershed, ensure people are safe from natural hazard. Oh, I'm having trouble, sorry. Safe from natural hazards. And that the watershed decisions are based on not municipality by municipality, but how one municipality's decisions can affect other municipalities, perhaps negatively. The Conservation Authorities has been working for quite a while with the province to ensure that they were instituting the changes that were required. So this is quite a surprise. I suppose the main thing, and they're talking about what the effects are going to be on all of us with the changes to Bill 229. And one of those has to do with the Conservation Authority's ability to protect against flooding, which to me is a very serious thing, and ensure that developments aren't built in areas where that could produce flooding or natural hazard areas. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to start at the beginning of this. I'm not doing a very good job. The other thing that is of concern is that the Conservation Authority will not be able to issue a stop work order and will have to go to an injunction method. And this is a very costly and lengthy process that would incur legal fees and court fees. So it's mainly required if there is a development that is going to perhaps cause significant damage to the environment or alter a flood plain that does put people at risk. And Mr. Waters says the unintended consequence is contrary to the province's Made in Ontario plan, which references getting tough with polluters, illegal filling, dumping of contaminated materials, destruction of wetlands, habitat. So I would ask, I know this is an interesting item to have in our agenda, as it is recommending council to put forward a motion to the province. We certainly have done it before, but I would ask that council allow me next week to to bring this forward at our council meeting?
Sure, Councillor. I mean, if you have a motion to put forward, I would suggest you just put it forward. We could waive procedure at that time and allow for it to move forward at that time next week, and we can have a full discussion about it.
So can it be placed on the agenda at least, or how would you suggest I do that?
I suggest you write it out or send it to the clerk. The clerk will put it on the agenda as an added item to the council agenda, and then council would vote on waiving procedure to allow that for us to discuss it next week. And then I'm pretty sure your colleagues around the table wouldn't have a problem in doing that, as you've just kind of brought up the main top points to it this week, and then we can have a fulsome discussion next week about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would ask that council have a read of this. It came on at the last minute. So you may not have had a chance to read it. I think the concerns of the Conservation Authority are valid, and obviously they are very concerned. And at the end of the day, the Conservation Authority is there to protect us. So I would like to support what they are asking us to support. Thank you.
Thank you. So I got Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gallo, and Councillor Humphries. So Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Duran, the clerk. Mike, the report before us, I mean, is it not possible for us just to, make a motion to amend it and adopt the resolutions asked for within the correspondence? I mean, it's already written here, certainly it can be something that can be discussed, be it this week or next week at council. But my sense is it may very well pass, but it's already written out by the Conservation Authority. So I just want to get, input from the clerk, why we can't just put forward an amendment that says something like, council endorses or supports the motion or recommendation contained herein.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, that's absolutely an option, Councillor Thompson. I did advise Councillor Gaertner that the notice of motion, and that's just how we've done it in the past. But there's generally 2, 3, 4 ways to do procedure sometimes, and that is one of them. So, yeah, absolutely, that is an option.
I know we may not have been consistent in the past. I just think it's all here. I mean, if Councillor Gaertner wants to go this way rather than write out a notice of motion, I'd certainly be supportive of it. It's plain to see, and I think that rather have the motion, it's good to have the memo with it to provide that context and better understanding of what's being asked and why. So I think it's better all as one piece, but that's just my 2 cents.
I'll just, before I go through everyone, Councillor Gaertner, did you want to do that? You want to put forward that motion and then we can all speak to it instead of putting it
Thank
forward?
you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping to do that, and I'm glad that the clerk thinks that that's appropriate. That was part of our discussion today. So I would like to make the motion that, but I'm not, if I could ask Councillor Thompson, did you mean to send the first part of this to the province as well, or just the motion?
Councillor Thompson?
I'm just reacting to what Mr. Walters has put in the resolution himself with regards to, therefore it be resolved, and that those are the points that we are either endorsing, supporting.
Right. Thank you, and I certainly agree with that. So I would like to put this forward as is for council endorsement to send to the province.
Someone like to second that? Councillor Humphries? Okay. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. And on the surface, I support doing this. And I read through it and I didn't see any issues. However, I think it would be prudent to have staff review it and make sure from the town of Aurora's perspective, this is what we want to do. I suspect at the end of the day, it's going to be a yes. But I think it's a good exercise to go through. I mean, we can certainly discuss it next week in terms of how we proceed at council. But I support it from where I sit. I'd like our professional staff to advise us if this is the position we should be taking as a town of Aurora.
Mr. Waters, did you have an answer there, or did you want time and you can come back next week?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a lot there. We need to take a little bit of time to review it in the Aurora context and report back to you whether we support in whole or in part the resolution.
Would you be able to get that by next week?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be a tall task, to be quite honest with you. I think we can, if you wish, we can deliver. I'm in your hands.
Do we have a sense of timing that the province will be making, I guess, a final vote on Bill 229? Does anyone?
I don't. Councillor Gaertner, do you have any? Do they mention any timeframes? I'm assuming it's going to happen pretty soon.
Yes, the province is working very quickly these days, and I would ask that we do this as soon as possible. And I, if you would allow me, the Conservation Authority works for us, and they work to protect us, and you know, in many ways. And I think that if they feel this strongly, this is to Councillor Gallo, if they feel this strongly about this, they've taken their time to put this together. And I think that they are the authorities in this matter. I think that it should be supported as is.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if timing is an issue, I mean, there's no harm in doing this. I just, wanted to give staff an opportunity to weigh in. But if it's going to delay it and if it lessens the impact, we get it done, and I'm supportive of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just ask Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, if you can just, I guess, go through it and get as much of a perspective from the town of Aurora for next week, that would be very helpful. I think just ultimately just for everyone to have an understanding.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. Just one note is that Bill 229 has other components in it as well. It's kind of a COVID bill, and it includes other aspects. But definitely we'll focus on the Conservation Authority aspect, and perhaps maybe send out a memo to council once we do a quick review.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Councillor Gallo, you're good? Councillor Gallo? You're good? Okay, thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually my questions have been answered, and I'm in support. I should have put my head back down. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Thompson, do you have your hand up for a second time, or? Okay, I got Councillor Gilliland for a first time.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Wendy, thank you so much. Councillor Gaertner, actually, thank you so much for bringing this forward as soon as you were aware. I did read through the motion and what they're asking, the changes, and 100% agree with what they're asking. I completely understand the need and the urgency to make sure that the province does understand that this does make it a lot difficult for us to protect the environment and the wetlands, and the effects of flooding potentially affecting the neighbors, and also the authority. And essentially what this bill is saying is that the ministry could overturn what the Lakes and Coast Conservation Authority has recommended, and we want to have those protections. And I also agree with having municipal elected officials as having part of the say and being a part of this process. So I think there is a lot of things here that are being missed with this new bill, and it could just be that it's maybe without a careful review. And I really appreciate Mike Waters putting this together and bringing the attention to the province. Nothing's perfect the first time, and here's an opportunity to make some changes. And I'm glad that our Conservation Authority has taken this step to send a message. And I really truly hope that this helps and they listen and make some of these adjustments. So I support this.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Well, I understand, the desire to have staff weigh in and provide some additional input as to the impact locally for us. At the same time, I'm weighing that there's been a lot of talk about this in municipal circles as well as in the news over the last week. A number of municipalities have already done this. And I know the issue's been raised with Conservation Halton, and the mayors out there have recently either adopted a motion or will be adopting a motion. I know the Toronto Regional Conservation Area. So there's information out there that seems universal in terms of the opposition to it's not just related to Lake Simcoe, but it's across the board. To me, it kind of reminds me of the OMB reform and how municipalities banded together to say, listen, we're not in favor of this provincial legislation. We need some changes, and it's strength in numbers. And so I'm comfortable at this point, supporting the amendment on the floor and the words that Mike Walters put in the paper, because I believe based on what I've read and seen in other municipalities with other regional conservation authorities, it's all similar. The opposition and the concerns are fairly united across the board. And so I'm happy to lend my voice to it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I'll just say that, Councillor Gaertner, before you go, I'll just say that I fully agree. I mean, there's strength in numbers. We've done it before. We've actually led the charge in one instance, and we've seen what can occur when you all band together as municipalities and let the province know what they're proposing is wrong. So I'm in full support of us doing this and lending our support in the exact same wording. I find when you start to tinker with the wordsmith and change it around, it loses its impact. And so I'm in favor of standing with the rest of our municipalities and the rest the conservation authorities. So I'll be in support of this. And thank you, Councillor Gaertner, for bringing it forward to us. Councillor Gaertner.
I just want to thank everybody so much. I was less than eloquent trying to deal with this. Thank you, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Gilliland, for speaking to it so well. And I think it's possibly more important than we can even gather at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 7.1 Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Anyone have any questions on that, or someone want to pull that, or someone like to move that? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphrey, second. Comments, questions? Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you. I just would like to suggest or ask Councillor Gilliland, when I was reading the reviews of different planning applications, they didn't say where they were, or which, unless I missed it, which applications they were, the addresses, locations. So is it possible just when the committee is doing the comments to say to what specific development that is?
Councillor.
Yeah, I definitely could ask them to put the actual address so you know what you're referencing.
Thank you. I'd really like to. Thank you. I'd really like to be able to follow along appropriately, and I thank you and the committee for their work. It's an important committee. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. And if I may, Matt Zawanda is just absolutely fantastic, doing a great job as well. He is extremely well and knowledgeable in this area, and we have a great committee. They're very thorough. So kudos to the committee as well. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Thanks, Em.
Thank you. I will call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Regular agenda. We'll start with 8.1. Stable Neighborhood Policy Review Urban Design Guidelines. One, that report number PDS 20-068 be received. Two, that the revised urban design guidelines for stable neighborhoods is attached to this report be approved. And three, that staff present an annual report to council on minor variance application activity within the town's 4 stable neighborhood study areas. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second Councillor Kim. Comments, questions? Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters. Our delegate had a question about the semi-annual report, and I just kind of wanted to have your opinion on the logistics of that, and as far as if that was something that was doable, and just a little bit of opinion on what kind of reporting we would see from that.
Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the report would provide activity on minor variance applications that go to the Committee of Adjustment to amend the stable neighborhood zoning bylaw. So on an annual basis, we would indicate to you, similar to the delegated authority report, we would provide an update as to the activity on the minor variances that have been presented to the Committee of Adjustment. And from that, we would sort of recommend whether we need to undertake any fine tuning of the zoning bylaw.
Councillor.
Thank you. I guess what I'm getting at is, would it be too onerous to come at 6 months with the report? I mean, maybe, you know, it's something that we do, you know, semi-annual, and then, you know, if we find that there really isn't much of an adjustment, we can, you know, adjust it to an annual. If we realize that there really isn't many adjustments, would that be something that'd be too onerous to do?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, not at all. If that's council's
Okay.
desire, we can certainly produce that for you on a semi-annual basis.
Okay, perfect. That's something that hopefully I would like to see, and hopefully council will agree with that. The other question I had was just to kind of determine what the 2-block radius versus the 100-meter radius would look like. If you could kind of kindly define what that would look like.
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think the delegation sort of misunderstood the purpose of the radius, and she was referring to the Regency Acres guidelines on page 6. So what that radius is for is when staff receive an application for a site plan through the scope site plan process in stable neighborhoods. When we look at the site, our context is approximately defined by the radius of about 150 meters. But we make sure that when we do look and we do review the site plan application, we take a look not so much on a site-specific basis, but increase our horizons to about 150 meters to make sure there's compatibility in that area.
Councillor.
Okay, so I guess the interpretation then was more or less notification to the residents that this was going on, or was it more context? As I'm a little confused, because I thought maybe they wanted to expand the radius because they wanted to have a hand in understanding what those changes would be and object if they, you know, give them the opportunity to object at the committee adjustment if that's what they so chose. So you're saying the design guidelines are only within this 150 meters, not necessarily the notification, or is it two separate things?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I think the delegate misunderstood the purpose of the catchment area. So first of all, it's important to understand that through the scope site plan process, which is what the guidelines are referring to, there is no notification as part of that process. The authority is delegated to myself as Director of Planning and Development Services. So we don't issue notice at all through the site plan process when we receive an application within stable neighborhoods. Committee of Adjustment has its own notification process, and if there is a Committee of Adjustment application required, they will be given notices in accordance with the Planning Act.
Councillor.
Thank you. And through the Committee of Adjustment, if there was an application going through, as far as the surrounding residents, would they get a notification on that? Would it be different for a stable neighborhood? Could you expand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, notwithstanding whether it's inside or outside of stable neighborhoods, under the Planning Act, notification is required for a minor variance application. It's smaller than the typical Planning Act requirement. It's typically about a 60-meter radius, if I recall, whereby the Planning Act is 120. So it's not as wide as the Planning Act, but there is notification provided.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just kind of for clarity, maybe for the public, what is, when you're saying 60 meters, when you're talking about a radius, how many homes around would you kind of suggest that would kind of encompass when you're saying 60 meters, just to kind of give people an idea of what that means or translates to?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that really depends on the density of the neighborhood. So if it's a dense neighborhood, it could have, you know, a large number of homes within that radius. If it's a very low density neighborhood, it could have, you know, could have 2 or 3 or 4. So I can't really give you a number. It's just a distance away from the property. That's subject to variance.
I guess specifically within the Regency Acres area, it was just a ballpark. It could mean, you know, 25 to 30 houses surrounding it. I don't know. It was just trying to get a ballpark on what that would equate to. But I guess I get your point. I'm going to hold off on the rest of my questions and let the rest of council ask.
Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to follow through on what Ms. Beaton said, and it was in Ms. Sangster's email comments on the design guidelines in August. First of all, I'd like to change the wording to semi-annual with respect to the minor variance report. And I'd also like to include the ask from that August comment on the guidelines, that the same kind of report come to council on applications that are approved but did not comply with the recommendations in the design guidelines, so that we have an idea of just really where the design guidelines are going and how effective they are.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think it's important to realize that the guidelines are, they're not legislation, they're not enforceable. They are one example of how the zoning bylaw standards can be interpreted, given the context of the area that the guidelines have been developed for. So in many instances, we have taken the guidelines as a first step, and then we've negotiated with builders and designers to create a product that is compatible with the character of the host neighborhood. So in some ways, I think their interpretation is maybe, we look at them as being flexible, but they do provide a roadmap or guideline for staff and the designers to follow. There may be instances where we do deviate from those guidelines, but I'm not sure that may be a bit of a tall task to report on.
Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, the residents and I am we're asking for a report on, I mean, any applications that didn't comply with the design guidelines. That should be pretty, I can't see that would be an onerous task for staff, because the staff working on the particular application would know that firsthand and would be able to make note of that. Actually, I think they should make note of that through that process of approving a design. And maybe we'll find, I mean, I think this also would be very good for council to know and interesting to know which of the design guidelines are being readily accepted and which aren't. You know, it's a great, it could be a great information tool. And so I would ask that, sorry, Mr. Waters, I would ask that you ask your staff to be able to do that. And perhaps if they know that that is what's going to be asked of them, they could and it's just simple notes, just make simple notes along the way of the approving the application. I think it probably is something good for the planning department to know as well, if I may say that.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do that. I guess my question to the councillor would be so are we looking at major revisions to the guidelines or minor revisions or all revisions?
Councillor?
Well, I mean, we have a set of guidelines. If they're not being followed, then, in what way?
Mr. Waters?
If certainly, Mr. Mayor, if that is the direction of council, we can certainly prepare that report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully council will support this amendment. It was the annual to semi-annual. I believe the resident asked for semi-annual as opposed to annual reporting on the Committee of Adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And just tacking on to that, applications that do not comply with the recommendations in the design guidelines.
So that's an amendment you'd like to put forward?
Yes, please.
So the semi-annual, I can look to our mover and seconder and ask if they're okay with just changing that, because I think it already speaks to annual. So if we want to change it to semi-annual,
Thank you.
that can be a friendly one, but the second part will have to be an amendment. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, are you guys okay to making that semi-annual instead of annual as a friendly amendment? Are you guys okay with that? Okay, thank you. So Councillor Gaertner, you want as your amendment that, can you say that second part again?
That applications that do not comply with this, or that semi-annual report on applications that do not comply with the specific recommendations in the design guidelines?
Be reported on as well.
Yes, please.
It
could all be the same report.
Would someone like to second that? Would someone like this? I'm not seeing a seconder yet.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, can you repeat the amendment, please?
The amendment in essence is that the semi-annual report that comes to council on minor variance applications also report on any applications that do not meet the design guidelines. Is that correct, Councillor Gaertner, in essence?
In essence.
Would someone like to second that? And then I can get the proper wording up. Otherwise, if I don't get a seconder, we're not going to be moved. Councillor Kim, I'm seconding that. Okay. Mr. Clerk, can you get the wording on that?
I think so, Mr. Mayor. We'll put something up on the screen, and I'm sure council can let us know if it's not right.
Okay. Someone like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Humphries, I got your hand up for the original motion, or did you want to speak to the amendment?
Sure. Just a quick comment on the amendment, Mr. Mayor. I'm okay with the report coming twice and to have additional information. I'm sure staff will have to take a look at that and make sure that, I'm trying to think about how the report's going to look, and I guess, that'll be Mr. Waters' area. I know that there was another mention on perhaps in this area because of the age, would we include things from a non-compliance perspective through non-guidelines, things like how many trees had to be taken down, those types of things? Would it get to that level of detail? Or is it something that staff needs to, I guess, think about once we approve this tonight?
Waters, the way I'm interpreting Councillor Gaertner's request is that anything that basically does not meet the guidelines would be reported on.
Okay.
That's correct, sir. That's correct.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Councillor Kim, for the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the request is reasonable. I think everything's in the details in terms of what level of detail we're going. But when I read the staff report and the Regency Acres RPA was asking for that council should be made aware of all infill building applications that are approved by staff and do not comply with the specific recommendations. It seemed like they wanted council to know in more real time, and we know real time is challenging. And so for staff to come back with an annual report well after the fact, they didn't really. The response was not, I don't think, was what the ratepayers wanted from the spirit of their comments. And so I think for that, I think semi-annual and what Councillor Gaertner is requesting, depending on the level of detail you're going, is reasonable. So I can be in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson to the amendment.
Thank you. I'd really like to get a better sense of what the amendment on the floor really means. I mean, we talk often enough, and I've heard many councillors say about the importance of the wording in these motions and the direction we give to staff. And the way it reads to me is that, I mean, anything that is does not, as Councillor Gaertner would, comply with what says in that 200-page report, staff would then have to report back on. And so we've all read through the report, and there are tons of wording like minimize and encourage and avoid, and discussion of brick material or building materials. And I guess my concern is this is really going to get into the weeds. It's going to be an onerous report, and staff are then going to have to talk about all of the variants, so to speak, to what was in the guidelines. And again, these are guidelines. These are not definitive rules, but treating it like by saying there can't be any variances, and if it is, then staff need to report out. And then what does council do with that report? Do they chastise staff for
Information.
Following those kind of guidelines? I would like to see, either a more detailed version of this motion, or perhaps Councillor Gaertner can explain specifically what variances need to be reported out in this 200-page report.
Councillor Gaertner?
Fair enough. I assume this is for information. It's what I want it for. And I'd like to know how well the developers are complying with our suggestions, and what ones are they really, going for, and which ones are problematic. And I know that staff is going to do the best they can to, help developers comply with the guidelines. I'm not thinking of it as a chastisement, but I think you have a valid point, and I'll speak with the Ratepayers Association and see if they can tighten this up a bit and bring it back for next week. Okay. Would that be acceptable?
So, Councillor, would you remove this and then maybe pull this next week and put an amendment forward that's more concise? Is that what you're maybe thinking?
Well, I wouldn't mind if it stayed in for the moment, and I'll improve it for next week, if that's okay.
Well, the only reason
I asked
I guess
it would depend.
Is in case it fails.
I mean, I don't know how many councillors would vote for this. I think council understands the intent of it, and the intent is not to be onerous, but the details do have to be worked out.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
I appreciate her explanation. Do I still have the floor?
Yep.
Then through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, based on the wording that was put forward and my concerns about the language that's in the report and how staff are dealing with it, how do you see this report going? I mean, do you see that it has the potential to be onerous, and that you could, or staff could, essentially have to, I guess, detail a lot of the variances or alterations from these guidelines?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it could be quite onerous, depending on the extent of the changes that are made in terms of aligning or not aligning with the guidelines. I mean, as my question was asked previously, are we looking at major changes or minor changes or tweaks? Like how, what's the depth of reporting that we have to do? I completely understand the minor variance activity. That's pretty black and white. When it comes to guidelines, they are guidelines, and sometimes they need to be amended or adjusted. But again, if I could understand the depth or the breadth of what we're reporting on, that would be important.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. White. And, you know, I'm supportive of, you know, recommendation 3, but coming on a semi-annual report. But my concern is, you know, as Mr. Waters elaborated, is, you know, to what level of detail is council asking for in this recommendation? And I'm not sure. Maybe, you know, we can clean it up as Mr. Mayor has suggested. But at this point, I'm not willing to support this motion because of my concerns of it being an onerous task on staff.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland, for the amendment.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I had some similar questions to Councillor Thompson. I do support the semi-annual report. Mr. Waters did express that it was not going to be an onerous task. The only challenge I have with the secondary part is exactly the fact that it is very subjective, and it could be something extremely minor to something that's major. I understand the intent of what the ratepayers are asking for, as far as understanding the scenarios of who's following what, who's not. Is this working? Is it working? Is it not? But I do think it does need to be cleaned up, and I would be prepared to separate the two motions tonight and just go ahead with the semi-annual, and then clean up the urban design guideline secondary part till next week, and clean it up to something that you feel will be a bit more streamlined or more targeted to what the expectation is for planning in that regard. That's kind of like what I would want to see. I wouldn't want to see this fail just based on that secondary part. I just think that it merits a little bit more work. So Councillor Gaertner, I don't know if that would be something you would be in for, but I would like to vote on the first part, and let's come back with something on the second part next week. That might be a little bit more centralized to the intent.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll go back to Councillor Gaertner. Councillor Gaertner? You're on mute. Sorry, Councillor.
That's a fair ask. So let's take it off the table for tonight on the understanding that I'm bringing it back next week.
So you'll withdraw the amendment?
Yeah, thank you.
Who seconded that? I go Councillor Kim, right? Yeah, Councillor Kim, you're okay. Did you get withdrawn? Okay. Okay, so back to the original recommendation that was moved onto the floor. I got Councillor Humphreys and then Councillor Kim.
Through Mr. Mayor, just in terms of the last discussion, I think I'm okay moving forward with the report. I think I look forward to Councillor Gaertner's updates next week to see how we can perhaps further tweak what we'll be seeing. But I'm okay to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim.
I think my one comment was already made during the amendment, so I won't duplicate that. But I think overall, I mean, this is a pretty fulsome guideline, and I don't think one sitting we're going to be able to go through and make amendments or do anything of that nature. I think we just need to approve, let it go. And I think what Councillor Gaertner recommended in her amendment that will come next week, I think that'll go a long way to evolving this guidelines so that it improves over time. I don't think we're going to have a just-in-time guideline that's going to be perfect for the next 20 years. So, this is an evolving process, and I think this is a good first step. And I'll approve the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, first time.
Thank you. And just through you to Mr. Waters regarding the objectives of the design guidelines, I just wanted to be crystal clear that radius and the objective of that has nothing to do with notice. If an application comes to the Committee of Adjustment, there's the appropriate notice that will be given. If it's a zoning, or I assume, I doubt it'd be an OP, but it would go through the planning process, public planning process, and appropriate notice would be given. The objective of that is to just give context to whatever redevelopment is at a certain radius around the particular development.
Mr. Waters?
Yes, sir, that's correct, sir.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. It was just a question. The resolution was up on the screen just a moment ago, and the language still said semi-annual report, and I just didn't know if that was something that we were discussing, or is it going to say annual report?
No, we already, the mover and the seconder already agreed for a friendly amendment to semi-annual.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Mr. Mayor, would you permit me to finish my first time minutes?
Actually, sure. If you got something after that, after you finish that, then yeah, sure, you can go for a second time, because I did cut you off. You are correct. When we came back, I should have went back to you. So go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to some things that the ratepayers have issues with. One is the variances to the Committee of Adjustment. It is quite a while ago, and I don't think Mr. Waters was here at that point. But Mr. Ramuno did say that as we had worked so hard on this and for so long, that we could the planning department could send a message to the Committee of Adjustment, basically saying that, and that that we felt that what we put in place for the stable neighborhoods should stand. So through you to Mr. Waters, I think we had a conversation about this as well. In light of the work that was done on this, how much and how long, and it was quite a process. Could council suggest sending to the Committee of Adjustment that notation when they're looking at variances in the stable neighborhoods?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. DeCiro can add after I finish my comment, but council cannot fetter the Committee of Adjustments decisions.
No.
So my advice is not to do that. But I should note that we, I think it was last year, we did have a variance proposal to exceed the GFA within stable neighborhoods, and we sent a clear message to that applicant that we were not supporting that. We did write a negative report, and they subsequently withdrew their application before it was presented to the committee.
Councillor?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Perhaps you would find out for me, but I was at a Committee of Adjustment meeting in March, just as COVID was coming, and there was an application that went to the Committee of Adjustment for variance in the stable neighborhood. And if I recall, staff was not speaking against it. Staff made a suggestion that perhaps if they, came halfway, that it would be acceptable. So I would appreciate if you would look into that. That was very, very concerning to the residents. And I misspoke. It's not that council, Mr. Muna said that because council had worked so hard and so long on this, that the planning staff in their report to the Committee of Adjustment could mention that and say that they felt that it was appropriate to honor the zoning bylaw in the stable neighborhoods.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know what Mr. Ramuno said during his time here, but we look at each application on an own site specific basis. We compare it to the bylaw that council adopted last year. And in some cases, it may make sense to support a variance. In other cases, it may not be. So it really depends on the variance that's being requested. That's before staff.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'm sorry to hear that, because I think that what we put in place should stand. But I'll leave that one. I want to know through you, Mr. Waters, the resident was talking about the lighting around all sides of the property with no limits to brightness. And I know we have a lighting bylaw that says lights cannot shine into the neighboring property, but I have seen in Richmond Hill a home, large-ish home, that had lighting all the way around it. And it was just, I can't imagine living next door to that. So is that something that we could put into our bylaw, or is it in our bylaw?
Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware that the zoning bylaw does not contain that
No.
standard or requirement. I don't recall it being part of the guidelines that are before you
No.
tonight. And I've never had that come up through the scope site plan process as an issue. We can certainly sort of put it on our radar as we get in these applications through the building season, that to make sure that lighting is not an issue, in addition to the security cameras that were raised by the resident as well.
Councillor?
Thank you. Thank you, because the homes are going to be large, and I can just tell you, this house that I saw, I couldn't, it was like daylight in the area around the house, and that must have been horrible for the neighbors. The other thing is encroachment of second floor balconies and rear and side yard decks and balconies. We do have in our zoning bylaw parameters about that. Not in this one. Is it possible to, because it's a privacy issue, the home is going to be so large and so close to the neighboring property. Is it possible to put in parameters into our zoning bylaw that respects that privacy?
Point of order.
Yes?
Councillor Gilliland, point of order?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I feel like we're talking about zoning bylaws, noise bylaw, light bylaws, tree bylaws. It's really not really relevant to the urban design guidelines. I just want to really focus on what the report has been presented today in respect to the urban design guidelines. I think you have some really valid points, but I just don't think it's related to the report that we have in front of us.
Councillor, I would have to agree that we are discussing the guidelines, not the zoning, but I mean, absolutely valid points. But maybe if you wanted to bring those things forward, maybe you could bring them forward as a notice of motion at a separate time or under new business.
Thank you.
I'd ask that we stick to just to the guidelines and the urban guidelines.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to reflect what the rapier. The other thing is, well, maybe it's the same point, but there was a comment about driveways. I don't believe that we allow those reverse below grade driveways anymore. Mr. Waters, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, I'll put that in my motion then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I will call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. 8.2. Request for traffic calming measures, Aurora Heights Drive and Seaton Drive. That report number PDS 20-070 be received for information. Would someone like to move the recommendation, please? Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Gilliland. Comments or questions on this report to receive for information? Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do note that the number of cars that are on these streets are over the, in the limit that we could be using calming, but that they didn't find that the speeds were. I think that I noticed that I'm going to say we're becoming a little more like Toronto with respect to traffic and speeding. I mean, we're growing, and people are in a hurry. And so we're getting a lot of these complaints on many streets. And I can see how it would be disturbing to the residents, safety and otherwise. So I would just like to challenge our traffic specialists to see if there's something that we could do to try and calm the traffic on all of our streets, just calm people down, because I guess a red light camera would do it. But it's really becoming a problem. I don't know if other councillors are hearing about this, but the residents who are speaking to me are talking about this more and more. And I would like to find a way to help them.
Thank you. Councillor Humphries?
Through Mr. Mayor, sorry, can you hear me okay? Just a quick question through Mr. Mayor, just to staff. I apologize, I haven't called ahead of time. Where did this stem from? Was it something we arbitrarily responded to, or was there a motion? I'm trying to remember, just wondering, because I don't remember these two particular streets being a real big issue.
Mr. Waters?
For you, Mr. Mayor, there was a petition that was submitted by the residents on each of the streets,
Okay.
on Aurora Heights and Seaton.
Okay. Also, sorry, through Mr. Mayor, so they started the warrant process themselves, and at this point, it looks like most of the warrants aren't fulfilled. I do know that Aurora Heights is, pretty busy road, and Seaton is as well. I can understand because it's very curved in certain areas that they wouldn't make roads like that anymore. So I can understand their concerns. Are there, just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters, any opportunity to do some gentle type of calming measures? It doesn't have to necessarily be like speed humps and things like that. Sometimes we could put things in to make certain areas of the streets a little more safer. Was that potentially reviewed, or?
Waters?
For you, Mr. Mayor, there's a couple ways to reduce speed. The first way is to reduce the speed limit. And the second way is to make the road narrower, so not as wide as it is now, which then people, have to slow down because it's not as wide, right? I don't know what the speed limit is on these two roads. It may be 40, it may be, they're collector roads, so they're probably posted around 40 or 50K, I would imagine. But that's the simplest way, is to reduce the speed.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. I'd love a chance to kind of look at the road. I may take a little drive before the next meeting and see if there's anything we can change here, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gaertner?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters. Within the warrants that are your rubrics, do you also get reports from the YRP about any accidents that might have occurred within these areas to kind of justify it being unsafe?
Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it's not part of the 3 warrants that are analyzed to determine whether there should be speed calming implemented or not.
Councillor?
Okay, I'm just surprised. I just know many years ago when I advocated for speed calming measures on Heathwood Heights, having reports from the YRP and seeing the accident level, if there was any, was a really important component to make a decision to do it. And unfortunately, there was some calming measures that were put in place because it was an area identified as a lot of accidents would occur. I can certainly understand Aurora Heights between Bathurst and Delane Drive having kind of the same issues. I know Heathwood kind of had that as well. It would just be interesting to know if maybe that is a high accident rate area and maybe it does merit a speed hump there. It seems to be right on that threshold of 14 kilometers, which is supposed to be a minimum 15. So it just kind of hits that threshold. Is that something that we could inquire to see if there is any accidents that have occurred there in the last 6 months, year, or something to kind of give us some sort of idea of what that area is like?
Water?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can certainly follow up with YRP and determine what the accident numbers were. Just as an anecdotal note, or more of a historical note, rather, excuse me. My understanding is we did do similar warrant analysis back in 2008, and it was determined that the traffic calming wasn't supported on these streets as well. So yes, we can certainly look into the accident rate for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I was just going to throw in Mr. Waters. Maybe at some point we could also look at, you mentioned about narrowing the road as a way of reducing speeds. So maybe through, I think Aurora Heights would be a well-utilized road through our cycling master plan, and maybe we could add 2 bike lanes, which would reduce the width of the road, which would cause down, and we'd also be providing safe bike lanes for our cyclists as well, because I think it's an excellent route for them. But I'll just leave that in your hands and as a thought.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. So without any other comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.3. Regional MCR update, employment land conversions and employment land mapping in Aurora. One, that report number PDS 20-031 be received for information. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions on this report to receive for information? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.4. Administration of Capital Project 31116. That report number PDS 20-069 be received for information. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Kim. Comments or questions on this report to receive for information? I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.5. Audio recordings of closed session meetings. 1, that report number CS 20-022 be received. 2, that the beginning with the first closed session meeting of 2021, staff audio record all closed session meetings. 3, that access to the recordings be restricted to the town clerk, chief administrative officer, town solicitor, and the town's closed session meeting investigator. And 4, that a bylaw be enacted at a future council meeting to classify the recordings as permanent in the town's record retention and classification bylaw. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gaertner. Comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, and I appreciate the report and the information that's presented here. And there's really only one part of this report in front of me that I do kind of question, and that's the part that keep the audio recordings in perpetuity. And I just kind of feel like there really isn't much of an example of many municipalities that keep it in perpetuity, and I don't see a reason why we can't amend that to something that in effect of 6 or 7 years, much like the recommendation for how long you might keep your taxes. I mean, I think the risk of keeping things a lot longer than that, you can really set yourself up for a situation of, I like to throw the term out there, cancel culture. And I wouldn't want to be set in a closed session situation when you're speaking freely about something in a context, maybe 20, 30 years from now, maybe that context does not translate the exact same way. And we see that does happen now on things that has happened 20, 30 years ago. And we've learned from the way we evolve that maybe maybe that context wasn't really the best way it was being communicated as we learn. And I just kind of feel like I wouldn't want to take away the merit, the closed session of what we're trying to do is, talk and discuss and have open conversations, the best interest of the community, the town, the residents. And I wouldn't want anybody to feel held back, and maybe the way the comments, maybe in the context of something is maybe executed. I'm not certainly suggesting anything for the purpose of hiding or doing anything. It's just really specifically on the council culture. And I don't know if it's the number's 10 years, but I just think after 10 years, if nothing's been done, I don't really see a reason why we need to be holding on to these.
Thank you. Councillor Gaertner. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor.
I agree with that. I wonder if legal could weigh in. I think the reason we would keep these would be for legal purposes. I'm not sure that there would be any other reason to keep them. So I don't know what the limits are on. I think that probably there are different limits on different legal issues, but I do think that we don't need to keep them in perpetuity. But I don't know. I'm not sure what kind of a limit to put on them, but I do think we should keep them for a good long time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No. Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Would Councillor Thompson speak to this, please?
Councillor Thompson, did you want to speak to this?
This is motion.
I'm comfortable with perpetuity. We sit in council and it's recorded. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere, and it's there for perpetuity. It'll be there forever. I'm comfortable in how I govern myself in closed session or an open session. I have no concerns that it's in perpetuity. That is the nature of the role, that we are a public figure, and what we say will always be out there in perpetuity. And so personally, I have no qualms if 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or whatever, a closed session recording of myself, for whatever reason came out there, I'm comfortable with how I conduct myself. So I'm fine with it being in perpetuity. It seems to me that most of our stuff, the recommendation is for perpetuity. And so we're just being consistent that way. So that's my take.
Councillor Gaertner?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I won't object. I'm just laughing a bit because if you've ever tried to find an old building record, a site plan or anything like that, those are definitely not kept in perpetuity. But yeah, why not?
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys?
Through Mr. Mayor, just a comment. I agree that we need to keep our records for as long as they're there in existence, and hopefully as we begin more modernized ways of keeping information, that it's slotted away, especially town information should be kept for a long time. In fact, I'm working on something right now that I wish back in 1957, if our records were accurate, we wouldn't be in a situation right now. So it's causing us a little bit of trouble. So absolutely, I would like to keep things as long as we can and in good order as things become easier to keep. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gillan, second time.
Thank you. And, I appreciate the comments around the table, and I certainly appreciate Councillor Thompson's remarks. I'm very confident in the way I know I conduct myself and the things that I say, and I'm really certainly not at all against anybody hearing what I have to say. I just feel like in perpetuity is not necessary. If they really need to dive deep, somewhere after 10 or 15 years, it must be a real problem. And I'm going to throw out cancel culture, and I just don't feel like it's totally necessary. So I mean, you can vote for how you wish. Again, I confident how I conduct. I'm not afraid to speak my mind, and I certainly know that I speak with integrity. But I don't think anybody speaks in a context on purpose. You know, we've seen these things happen, dig up from 30 years ago, and you know, and all of a sudden it's a completely different mindset, and it's a new modern term, this cancel culture, and I don't really know what that's going to bring moving forward. The spirit of this, absolutely agree with it, but I would just like to vote on it separate, board to be separate from this, and move from there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'll just say this is a long time coming. I'm thankful that this is here in front of us and that we're going to be moving forward, or hopefully moving forward with this. I'm very supportive of this. I was supportive of it, as I said, the first time that I saw it, and I'm supportive of it again. And I, as was mentioned, what I say behind the door is exactly what I would say sitting right here in front of the camera. I think we all need to remember that closed session is not to protect the individual; it's to protect the corporation. Councillor Humphreys, did you have your hand? You're on mute, Councillor Humphreys.
Hi, through Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I just was sort of tagging on to my peers' discussion, but I did want to thank Councillor Thompson. I think it's so important. I don't think anyone here is worried about what's said behind closed doors. To Councillor Gilliland's perspective, you know, it's great that we're getting this out and in front of the public to take away any of the mysteries or what they, you know, certain public may think may go on. It's always in the best interest. I believe everyone here has the best interest of the residents, and whatever happens is our best, doing our best for the town. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about it. Again, you know, it's a long time coming. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the vote. Separately, 1, 2, and 3. All those in favor for 1, 2, and 3? Opposed? That carries. And number 4. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.6. It's approval of the 2021 meeting schedule. Just trying to pull it up here. Give me one sec. There we go. That report number CS20-023 be received. 2, that the 2021 meeting schedule attachment number 1 be approved. And 3, that the town clerk be authorized to make amendments to the council and committee meeting schedule as required. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Kim. Comments or questions on this item? I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.7. Sports field development strategy update. 1, that report number CMS 20-028 be received for information. 2, that the Director of Community Services be authorized to enter into agreements with local schools and school boards for the shared use of sports fields, including any ancillary agreements required for same. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gallo, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just on the second recommendation, to authorize into agreements with local schools and school boards for the shared use of sports field. Just through you to, I guess, Mr. Furman, if he's online. When we say shared, do we mean reciprocal? It's always been a bit of a pet peeve of mine that our own residents, children, don't necessarily have access to our fields during school times. So when we're moving this forward and we say shared use, is it the intent of staff to go into negotiations with the school board, not only for the town to have access to sports fields, but the other way around as well?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the intention here is specifically related to fields that are on school property, or in some cases may overlap school and town property. Historically, council has provided the same delegated authority to the director for entering into agreements with the York Catholic District School Board, wherein a couple of their grass fields that are on school property, we have access to use them and permit them out in evenings and weekends through these shared use agreements. That's the nature of what we're looking for here, just to give us some flexibility going forward as we are talking about one property in particular with the York Region District School Board at the moment.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I've been planning on a notice of motion to deal with the opposite side of that equation. The kids, in our schools naturally are our own residents, and we don't allow the school boards to have access to our fields wherever schools are adjacent to our fields, and it's something that's been bothering me. And so anyways, I have intentions to move that forward and put a notice of motion to at least have that discussion. A few schools have come to me, and at least school councils have asked for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to either Mr. Furman or Ms. McDougall, I'm certainly supportive of it, and we've talked about this for as long as I've been on council about the need for more fields and working with the school boards, and it comes up every few years, and the comments from staff over the years have always been, yes, we do this. And so I guess I just want to manage my own expectations as well as the expectations of residents, because it's always been my perspective that we've had these conversations off and on with the school boards over the years to some varying degrees of success. So what is the expectation this time around, and how will it be different than past discussions that we've had with the schools and the school boards?
Mr. Furman? Or did Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The intention, there's very limited opportunity. This just provides us with the flexibility to move forward. Many of the school board fields actually are not suitable because of the wear that they get, but there are a few that are suitable. As mentioned, there is one in particular called Lions Park. It's behind the former George Street Public School. So that school is no longer in use as a school, and therefore the field conditions are much easier for us to maintain. And this also gives us the opportunity to work with other individual schools. For instance, I had started discussions with the Aurora Montessori School about their field, that type of opportunity. The public school board is very amenable to this. Going back several years, again, the primary roadblock has been field conditions. So there are very limited opportunities because of the field conditions, but where there are some occasional partnership prospects, we'd like to be able to move forward with those, as those are the most economical way to increase field availability.
Council?
Thank you, John. And I understand that, this will certainly help, but I guess in terms of going back to the managing expectations, this isn't the magic solution. We know that, we have a deficit, we need plenty of fields. And while this may be one piece of the puzzle, there's still a greater need out there, be it for other arrangements or land or however we go about it, right? This will not solve our issues.
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. This is just one small tool. With the, as mentioned in the report, with the recent confirmation from the Stronach Group that we have access to those fields for another 5 years. That alleviates our immediate pressure. This is just one small tool that we can have available to us and that we can move forward on while we take the time to more thoroughly develop other opportunities.
Councillor?
Great, thank you very much. And as I said from the beginning, I'm certainly supportive of it. I just wanted to be clear in what we expect to get out of this. So thanks and appreciate staff efforts.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim, first time.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Furman. The report states that staff and investigators couldn't investigate further partnerships with the school because of the COVID environment. Is there any, could you give a specific example of why they couldn't investigate with the use of, PPE and other precautions? I don't think it requires a big crowd of investigators to do additional research to add further options. Can you extrapolate on that, please?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the report indicates that staff were not able to conduct additional research on field requirements. We certainly have been having discussions where possible with school boards. We've started some discussions. Others have been more challenging to get in touch with, but we're certainly working with them for conversation.
Councillor?
So it's not really physical issues that prevent investigators from looking further into partnerships, but it's just the schools are not responding or just communicating readily because of the situation that they're in with their situation always in flux. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'm saying is that we've been engaging the school boards. There's only one that hasn't really been responsive, and we're still working on ways to get to them. Why they're not responsive, I could not say. It's the part where we haven't been able to move forward with research is on the staff side and the sport group side, where we've been asked to more thoroughly dive deeper than the sport field development strategy did on utilization rates and specific sport group needs. That type of research has been put on the back burner due to the pandemic and the impact that's had on both town resources and sport group resources.
Councillor?
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gower, second.
Thank you. And just through you to, I'm not sure who, but in the report, it speaks to the financial implications. And the two paragraphs that are there, they appear to revolve around generally the town's outdoor field development strategy or study. It does say a funding strategy will be presented to council as part of the future sports field capitalization considerations. To me, that's any new land or acquisitions. Are there any financial implications if we move forward with any of these agreements?
Mr. Dougal or Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are no financial implications at this time. Any partnership opportunities of this nature would be managed within the operational services operating budget. We're talking about field grooming, so a little bit of mowing, seeding, and fertilizing. That's all that's involved. If there were any capital works to be required, then of course that would come back to council through a separate report or through the capital budget. But what we're proposing here has a very insignificant impact on operating resources and can be absorbed within the current operating budget.
Councillor?
And from a legal perspective, liabilities, insurance, all that would be under the agreements?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we already have a standard agreement in place with the York Catholic District School Board that covers all of that, and we would be modeling any agreement with other schools or school boards on the same type of agreement that addresses all the risk management and liability issues and insurance, et cetera.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We'll move to 8.8. Request to remove a property from the Aurora Register of Properties of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest, 93 Tyler Street. 1, that report number PDS 20-074 be received. 2, that the listed property located at 93 Tyler Street be removed from the Aurora Register of Properties of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland. Comments or questions on this item? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We have no notices of motion. New business. I will start with who I see on my screen first. Councillor Gallo, any new business? No. Councillor Gilliland, any new business? No. Councillor Thompson, any new business? Councillor Gaertner, new business? You're on mute, Councillor.
It's National Seniors Safety Week.
Is this new business or public service?
Public service. Sorry.
Do you have new business? No?
Nope.
Okay. Councillor Kim, new business? No. And Councillor Humphreys is not here at this moment. So I will go back around the other way. Councillor Kim, public service announcement. No. Councillor Gaertner, now public service announcement.
Thank you. So, and I'm not on mute. So it's National Seniors Safety Week. I guess that's it. Tomorrow is, and I didn't know that there was this, it's Remembrance for Road Crash Victims. We often see those little bouquets of flowers, etc., along the road. It'd be a terrible way to lose a loved one. It's also Fall Prevention Month, and this is very important for seniors. Sometimes when you fall, you just never recover or never recover very well. So we all need to be very careful and not do what my mom did, which was actually slip on a magazine that was on the floor. It's interesting the things we can slip on. So everybody, please be careful.
Thank you, Councillor. Absolutely. Councillor Thompson, public service announcement.
I just want to, I congratulate the Legion on once again, a wonderful Remembrance Day service. I know it was very challenging this year with COVID, and it was different, but yet at the same time, it's certainly one that, I think we all hold in our hearts. I missed being part of the parade and walking, with the veterans and talking to members of the Legion. But once again, I really appreciate all their efforts they did this year, and was glad that they were able to stream it for those that couldn't attend. And so, just once again, congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Absolutely, it was very moving. Councillor Gilliland, public service announcement.
Thank you very much. And I want to echo what Councillor Thompson said. It was a very beautiful service. The public announcements that I do have to say is that there's an Aurora Deck the Halls tour that we're doing. And the deadline to register for that is November 20th. So just bring it to everybody's attention. It's kind of a fun thing. You can go to aurora.ca/deckthehalls. something everybody's all excited about, getting all festive for the holiday season. And also for the Santa Claus parade that's going to happen on November the 28th. And I believe they're still looking for some spots to fill. So definitely look for some more information on that at aurora.ca/Santa parade.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, public service announcement? No? Okay, I don't have any as well, but I just wanted to remind everyone, we are obviously in the red zone, which is control, which sees capacity limits within a lot of our local businesses. I did want to mention to everyone, it is our responsibility, all of us as a community, to come together to work together for us to be able to move out of this red zone and slowly move into an orange and possibly into a green, where we can begin to open up a little bit more of our local businesses in our community. And I know that the community is pulling together. We've done an excellent job up to this point, but I know we will do an even better job to be able to move down those different levels to get to a point where we'll be more opened up, hopefully by Christmas time for the holidays, and enjoy it a little bit more as a community together. So I just want to remind everyone to stay safe, wash your hands, maintain physical distancing, and wear a mask when in enclosed spaces. And if we do that all together, we will get through this. So with that being said, I will ask for Councillor Gaertner. You're waving, you're flagging me down. Go ahead.
I'm flagging you. Thank you. And we, excuse me, we didn't have a council meeting last week, but last week was the celebration of Diwali. And I just hope that everybody of the Hindu faith had a great celebration, although it would have been, again, very different from the usual celebration.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo, go ahead.
Just following your note, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't intending on doing this, and I don't usually call out businesses, but I've had the missed opportunity to spend some time at the Moore Chiropractic Clinic on Yonge Street for various reasons, and I just a shout out to them and the special work that they do there. It's a bit of a great learning experience on some of the businesses downtown and services that they continue to provide. His father was also a veteran, and a picture of his dad is on Wellington Street. And they're a bit of a hub down there, and seeing some Aurorans come in and out of that place and the great work that they do. I just wanted a quick shout out to them.
Thank you. Always appreciate a shout out to our downtown businesses, and actually all our businesses. Thank you for that. So that motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Kim. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the week. Please stay safe.